Hello everyone, and this is Jen Amaral Coons from Beyond the Mirror with my little video of the day, Living Open. And I want to talk about cultivating hope in the midst of uncertainty. And so originally, if I'm being fully honest, like what I wanted to talk about is how the filth in my house is mocking me, having a bunch of people home 24/7 all the time. And that's like where my day started. And it's not even that bad. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like the most messy my house has ever been, like it's probably like a 4.5. It's not terrible. We have the laundry done, and like the floors aren't completely muddy now that it's been dry with the dogs running back and forth, and that's the worst. That's what drives me crazy, is when the dogs are running out in the mud, coming back in, and we're having to mop the floors like twice a day. But it's just like overwhelming to me today. So today I woke up and I was irritable and agitated. I even like snipped at the kids, or like that's what I'm gonna call it, but what it actually does in some ways is a little of the playing of the martyr. Like I'm like, this is all the things I'm doing for you, obviously, if you can't see all the ways I'm being the light in a dark time, and that I'm doing all the fun things and I'm continuing to work and all of this, and then the house is a mess. Like, can't you give me 20 minutes a day to do the dishes? And that's where my morning started. And then it looked like going on a hike to Horsetooth Falls, and it was so beautiful. And I just said on the way to the falls, like after I was done playing the martyr, that I was sorry that I did that, and that I just am really struggling today. And I wish that I could be telling the kids this, and it could sound like from them, what I would get back would be, wow, Mom, I can tell you're working really hard. I didn't realize that, and we'll do more, And then I said, maybe that's an unrealistic expectation to have for kids. However, they're like 11 and almost 18. So then I said, it's not your job to do that for me. And, I'm just feeling overwhelmed with everything. And then my daughter was like, Mom, like you're overwhelmed, and like gave me a hug. And it was a really sweet moment that we had. And then we went on the hike, and then we spent like 2 hours being there and having our breakfast. We packed it like a picnic and stayed by the waterfall. And you might be wondering why this story of everything mocking me and me playing the martyr and what that has to do with, cultivating hope in times of uncertainty. And I feel like, as I was on this journey, that hope always exists for me, and faith always exists for me, and trust isn't always accessible to me in every moment, but I know it's there. And that during that hike, I basked in the gratitude of what was, and watched the gratitude just grow. And all that I have in this moment are health and connection and a great family, and just so much beauty, in the world. And being able to see people, even though we're passing each other on a trail with masks, and just the little moments of connection that feel nice. I saw a smiling dog, and like all of those moments. And that's why I want to talk about these stories, because I feel like sometimes we omit like the negative part that happens, and we can not want to be in that vulnerable place of talking about it, or we could struggle with just focusing on that, like OMG, like look how my life sucks and my house is mocking me. And I feel like I do a really good job of holding both. Like, yes, my life was being mocked by the mess this morning, which is still there because it's not like we cleaned it before we went on a hike. Although now, having gone on the hike, I have more energy for that. And it's noticing, that we are imperfect, and we are human, and we are humans being, and we don't excel past that. There is no like superhero, although I like to think like I was Iron Man in another life, or Wonder Woman currently. But, we aren't a superhero. We're just humans. And so we are going to struggle in moments, and we are going to have the dark thoughts get the best of us. And that's going to happen at different times. And we're going to wake up with more or less energy, or better or worse attitude. And there's not much we could do about that. But what we choose to do with it, is important. And so when I saw myself in that place, I knew like I needed to get out into nature and just get away and connect to the universe, which to me is like a higher power, or a spirit, or God, or the great mystery, or the energy of the world, or the universe, or Reiki, or whatever we want to call it. My belief that I'll own as mine is just that in many languages and many religions we call the same thing by different names, and there's something bigger than me that I feel when I get out into nature, and when I feel like I'm all like caught up in there in the negativity. I'm not afraid to say that. Like, I'm human. I get caught up in negativity. I'm a therapist who gets caught up in negativity. Like, it's not like I learn all the skills to never go through a struggle. Like, I learn all the skills to like love myself through the struggle and move through the struggle and not get stuck in it. So I feel like the skills are not preventative, they're additive. Like our thinking a certain way. Like, we can only decide what we want to do with the negative thoughts that we have or the negative experiences that we have. And so I believe that cultivating hope is looking at, there are struggles, a struggle in our time right now, being quarantined, being in a pandemic, and we've had many other struggles in our life and terrible things that have happened in our world that we've been a part of, watched, experienced, and that cultivating hope isn't taking those away, even though I wish with all my might that we could, and it could be like that. It's deciding what we want to do with it. How do I want to show up in this time? Is there something I want to volunteer to that brings me joy? Right now, the kids and I had an opportunity to deliver meals to the elderly, and so I have a friend, Andy Grant, who was at Grant Farms here in Fort Collins, and he started a program for feeding the elderly, and so that is something that is happening now, that we're getting ready to do some fundraising for that, to try and raise some money for this project, so that he can do that on a nonprofit to just allow farm-to-table food. Can we bring good and healthy food to people who have low access to that, and do that for free, and get funds for that from other people who can't afford funds for that. So we had the opportunity to be a part of that, to help share the word of that in social media, and to help deliver food to the elderly. And so we did it one day. I mean, it was just our first day last week that we did that. We showed up at the farm, we grabbed the food, we brought it to where it needed to go. And when we left, my daughter must have said 3 times in that day, like, I had so much fun at the farm. Like, we just went there, looked at the farm, saw the dogs, grabbed the food, left. It wasn't like a long thing, but it was the best part. She's like, this is the best part of the quarantine so far. And we talked about why that was, and it was meaning and purpose. That I think what gets lost are what kind of goals do we make during this time? Like, realistically, we don't really know when we're going to be able to do everything the same way we could before. So it's hard to make goals really far out there. And so what are we going to do? Like, what are we working? Are we not? Everybody's doing something different. The kids are doing school and it doesn't feel great. The different kind of meaning and purpose. And so we want to connect to, what do we value? What kind of person are we? What brings meaning and purpose? And how do we connect more to that, like during a hard time? And I feel like cultivating hope is connecting to others with meaning and purpose, and showing up the best that we can in a rough situation. When we feel like our cluttered world is mocking us or caged in. That's the other metaphor I have to keep adjusting in my mind. I see myself as like a bird caged in and I can't get out. And then I'm like, no, it's not really like that. Like, I'm really safe being held in the arms of my home, in the arms of nature. And I have to shift and pay more attention to the metaphor that is more empowering, that I am actually safe. Like, and I have a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood with a trampoline and a backyard. We're a corner lot, so we have almost a full acre here, and our dogs get to run and play, and that I'm just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the mountains. I can be there in 10 minutes, and it's so wonderful, all the things that I have. And so I choose to hear those thoughts. I'm a caged bird. I even see that visual. I'm a visual thinker, so I see that right there. There I am. They're a caged bird. There I am in the cage like Gargamel and Ariel, and they're holding me like a Smurf. And that's like what I feel like. I can't get out. Like, I have to wait, and I don't like that, and I'm trying to break free, and it's going to take me some time. Or I can just think I'm being held in the arms of a mother, Earth, and I'm being held, and I'm safe, and I'm warm, and I have options, and I have nature, and I can isolate at home, and I can isolate in nature, and I can do that in ways that feel connecting, and finding isolation and connection available at the same time to me. And so I like to talk about my story because I feel like people learn through that. through metaphors and through stories and through parables or whatever it is that you speak. But I find with my clients, because I am a visual thinker and I think in metaphor, that's really helpful for people to see. And sometimes the stories I share are my own, and sometimes they're stories I've heard or that have been told to me. And I think that it's a nice way to learn, because it takes a lot of times the shame out. And I feel like shame is such a nuisance that gets in the way. Like, if we're just going to call it lightly what it is, like, shame is a nuisance that gets in the way of my life. And I feel like it's not my issue. I don't hold a lot of that. I can hold a lot of irritability sometimes. Like, I can hold a lot of like agitation or even anxiety. If I'm doing too many things in the world, I can begin to get anxious that I don't have that quiet space for myself. And so I hold different things. Shame, I don't hold that much. I feel like, there are some things that have happened that I don't like or I don't feel good about, but I also don't feel ashamed. Like, I've made choices that maybe weren't the greatest choices, but they all got me to where I am now. And I've experienced things or done things that I'm not proud of in my life, like starting at a young age. And I don't, like, all of that got me to where I am now. All of that created more compassion for myself. And so I think about the invitation, I guess, today is, and looking at what feels like, is it tainted? Like, I'm thinking of silver, when my mom used to have this silver set that her grandmother gave her, and it was like a beautiful silver, like, tea set. And we used to have to scrub it because the silver would get all greenish and, like, what's that word? I don't know. I can't think of it. Maybe you know. But I'm thinking tainted. So when our life feels tainted by something, we want to remember that it's really shiny underneath, that there is an element within us that is our given right, that is our wholeness, that is shiny underneath. And we can't see it in every moment or feel it in every moment. But when we cultivate hope, we're bringing that out. We're creating an invitation and a space for that to be held there, not just for ourselves, but for someone else. And when we hold that for ourselves, if we have that ability more often than not to cultivate that hope and to hold our own wholeness, then we can really do that for so many people, because it's like putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first so that we can take care of others. And when we bring that out in them, it's just so beautiful. Like, to see, I love that with kids too, to just have them see something in a different way. And the story that's coming up for me around that is, I remember years and years ago when the kids were really little, there was a neighbor boy who was probably 4, and a woman walked by and he said, "She is fat," like in this way that, seemed rude. And I said, "Cool, like, awesome. Like, isn't it great how people come in different shapes and sizes? Like, that's pretty awesome." And the kid looked at me like so confused and shocked. And I was like, "Don't you think? Like, people come in different colors too. Like, there's so many different sizes and colors and shapes, and ethnicities and religions. Like, we're all so different that's what makes it cool. Like, I wonder if I'll be fat at some point. Like, I was fat when I was pregnant, And then he just looked at me and said, yeah, like, that is cool." And we had this really great conversation. But I could have said, like, "That's rude," or "That's not nice." Like, I could have had a different way. He was lucky he got me on a good day. Like, maybe on this day when my house was mocking me, like, be forewarned, it might have not have been that great. But on that day, he got me on a good day where I just smiled and was like, hey, he's like 4 or 5. Like, he's been taught this way. I can teach him a different way of seeing things. And that's what I think cultivating hope is. It's creating a different way of seeing things. It doesn't make the bad stuff go away. I wish it could, I really do. But it makes us look at it differently. It makes us digest the bad experiences or discomfort in a way that feels like compassion. And that's what I invite you to today. So as you're moving about the day, maybe you're having one of those really great on top of the world kind of days. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're sensitive to things around you. Maybe you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or loneliness. Maybe you're struggling with, isolation, or just not feeling well, or health. There could be so many things that we struggle with, loss of a loved one. And as you're doing that, I encourage you to hold on to some hope, even if it just feels like a little seed, maybe a seed that hasn't been planted yet, but you know that it's there for a time, that it can be planted at some time. And so there are different stages. Sometimes we can plant that seed and radiate it and watch it grow, and other times we're just holding that seed, and that's all we can do is just know that there is one. And sometimes it's really hard to find, and we have to connect with others and ask them to help us find that seed, and that's okay too. And so today I encourage you to hold yourself and your wholeness and those around you, to try and see the similarities between us versus the differences, and to cultivate moments of hope today. So thank you for listening. I'm been told I'm supposed to say like or share this. So if you like it and you want to make positivity contagious, go ahead and share with your friends. That would be pretty awesome. And I hope you have a fabulous day. Take care.